Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment for the Sony Xperia Z3 Tablet Compact. This is one of the most expensive tablets on the market, ounce for ounce, and that's because at 9.4 ounces and change, this thin, light, 8-inch Android tablet running KitKat out of the box with a promise to Lollipop from Sony. That's Android version 5.0, or often referred to as Android L, version L of the OS. It really is, in my opinion, one of the most compelling offerings on the market. Unfortunately, the price tag is also one of, as I've mentioned already, the steepest. And that's for the 16 gigabyte Wi-Fi version only. There's an LTE-enabled one, which is great if you want to be able to make phone calls, something you can't do on the Wi-Fi version that I'm demoing here. But you can do things like playing PS4 games remotely, and that's something that was only really offered on the NVIDIA line of devices, the Shield devices, and that whole brand now has grown. But Sony, utilizing the PS4 as basically any console manufacturer really should have. You can see I've got Destiny right there, a PS4 controller, and you can see by the light it's actually paired via Bluetooth with the Z3, and you will have to go through that pairing process, just to let those of you know that are curious how it actually works. And so now you can see I'm actually in the Destiny multiplayer on the Z3 using my PS4 controller. You'll get a good example of performance both with regard to what remote play is like, as well as the screen quality, which I think is outstanding considering it's not a Super AMOLED from Samsung, which really is the top of the market, top of the line when it comes to tablet experiences. In addition to that, you also have here streaming play, remote play from anywhere. Of course, the home network that your system's connected to is going to dictate performance along with the quality of the network you're streaming from. So this goes beyond what the Shield does on that brand, but the Shield does give you a great experience in that it gives you basically a Steam library on the go. But you can see right here I'm playing with the controller. I know you can't see the controller, it is off screen, but this is the Z3 Tablet Compact that I'm playing on. And it's an amazing thing, I have to say, to be playing a game like this and actually, I mean, my visibility isn't great to actually play this right now in this capacity while filming for all of you, but the capability of this 9.5, not even 9.5 ounce tablet to be able to actually play console games like this. Here you'll see I'm going to hit the respawn button. Pretty fast. I mean, the response time is there, and I am nowhere near my system. Again, this is true remote play at its finest. I have to say that Sony's done a really good job. Are there issues? Sure, but most of the complaints I think will have to do with the network quality that people are working off of rather than the hardware, because the hardware is completely competent. That I can tell you, and you can see it right here as I get killed yet again. So let me take us out of gaming. It's a great feature to have. You can see on screen if you don't happen to have this controller to pair up, you can of course go that route. And this is really an experience you're not going to get with anything other than the Shield, which again utilizes Steam, which is amazing, but you have to have a GTX graphics card. It means you really have to have a PC that's far more expensive than what a PS4 is going to run. So this is a great alternative for people that are already vested in the Sony ecosystem when it comes to gaming. And the quality, everything that Sony's done here to optimize this, things look just as they should as I'm getting killed yet again. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of this and focus on the review here. So going right back to what the Z3 is really good at. I've mentioned the hardware, the resolution of the display. Let me go ahead and put the PS4 controller down. In terms of the 8-inch display that you're looking at here, I do believe it's one of the best you're going to get on a sub 10-inch tablet. Even though it isn't an AMOLED, I said this in my update, definitely one of the best. When it comes to the software, I think that Sony has done a really nice job on their skin. It's not anything new, but there are new enhancements. You can see quick access to just about every customization that you could possibly want. And everything is seamless. This is one of the best looking and functioning skins that I've seen on a tablet. It doesn't bog it down. So things like, or skins like TouchWiz that are notorious for, creating performance hits or taking performance hits on a toll on the system, you're not going to get that here in the Z3 experience, much like its phone sibling. In addition to that, you have some great onboard cameras. That front-facing camera, for those of you that are interested in taking selfies as well as video conferencing, 2.2 megapixel camera is one of the best that I've seen on any tablet, let alone, again, a sub 10-incher. The rear 8 megapixel matches that in terms of also being one of the best that I've seen on a tablet, and Sony's also gone out of their way quite a bit with the onboard software. You have the ability, you can see right now it's in the auto mode, but a wealth of camera modes here, really unmatched. Samsung, the only other vendor manufacturer making tablets that I think is as advanced as Sony, but Sony clearly takes it a step beyond Sammy because they are the DI king when it comes to at least that competition. Samsung trying to catch up now. Another story altogether. But look at all these modes. You have a tremendous amount, and then the ability to add even more and dive into just applications, of course, to use with the camera. So Sony has thought of this, made a clean interface. It's really nice. It's functional. As I mentioned before, like most of their software. I'm not going to jump into the settings there. Actually, I'll dive into a little bit just so you can see, of course, control of reversing, whether you're using front face or rear camera. Here, quick access to basically all the settings you would want on the fly, aspect ratio, the timer, the shutter, the preview, burst, the face recognition. If you want to go into video settings, you have that there as well, whether you want the microphone on or off, steady shot, and then core settings as well, geotagging, whether you want volume key to be basically designated as a custom zoom key, which is definitely a good thing. I mean, Sony shows their polish here. I know this may sound silly, but all these little things put together or bring together a finished device in a way that most manufacturers just don't seem to be up to snuff with. And basically everything else very simple. Still video capture, all right there. Let me go ahead and back out. In terms of the software, as I mentioned before, KitKat out of the box, Lollipop as promised. And the software here is pretty much what you would get with everybody. Some bloat, no question about it. The PlayStation application that I was just demoing, far from bloat. I mean, that is arguably one of the most compelling features you're going to find on anything other than the NVIDIA Shield tablet and Shield Portable when it comes to gaming. But beyond that, Sony has their Xperia Lounge. They also have their own software to sync up with their Xperia phones, the same way that Samsung has their side view application for Galaxy products, which is a nice thing. Their own update center is built in here, their own media service, because after all, Sony does make a living in the media business, both in basically every form of entertainment. And they want to stream it and sell it to you. So even though Google is there, of course, Crackle preloaded because that is Sony's own service. Free, definitely some good content there. What's new is basically, Sony's attempt to do exactly what every other manufacturer has been doing, which is, have an aggregate for all of your content. And I'm not even going to get into it because it's really one of my least favorite parts of the tablet. You can see when I hold down the home button, they have actually removed the what's new. I believe that was in the last software update, and I always knew that was going to be an area of contention because users of the tablet, of any Android KitKat tablet, expect to see exactly what Google wants you to see when you hold down your home button, which is access to Google Now, not access to Sony's onboard software. So they listen to customer feedback. That is gone, but what's new is still there, no question about it. But the Video Unlimited, as I was mentioning before, their own streaming service. The Walkman application, though, that's a great piece of hardware or software, to complement the hardware that you're getting here. Sony does really want to pitch that you have both a top-notch audio and visual experience, and that's why you are also given many controls to calibrate the screen. I'll get to that a little bit later. But here you can see essentially quick access to their music unlimited service, again, selling you on the streaming. And by the way, the front-facing speakers on here are very powerful for a sub 10 inch, especially this form factor is just crazy, but very powerful for it. For anything in its class, for that matter, I think they can best the Nexus 9. I mentioned that in my comparison of the two tablets. In terms of other things, LifeLog, Sony's own health application companion app, of course, Chrome pre-installed, Sony's Album. They've got a lot riding on that in terms of their software tied into their entire DI and camera business. So basically everything that you'd expect a manufacturer to try to bring to the table if they were in the consumer electronics business. Another nice element of the Z3 software skin is what Sony refers to as small apps, and you can see I've got them pulled up right now. That's just from hitting the multitask button that you would traditionally use to either gain quick access to the applications you have open or kill them off, close them, or essentially close all of them. So you can see I can easily do that, but pointing out again the small apps, you can customize which apps you'd like to have there, quick access to in the favorites bar. You can see Sony pointing out exactly what this is. And then if you just touch any of these, they do exactly what I just mentioned, which is open up a quick browser. You can resize this to whatever dimensions you like, even though I just apparently lost it there for a second. And you can maximize it, close it out. You can see all of the controls are up here, so we can make this full screen. And then it's docked here on the side. And that's sort of how this works in terms of docking all of the applications. This little left-hand corner tab, the directional pad, is how you actually move around that window. You cannot open multiple tabs, unfortunately, but this can work in tandem, of course, with the web browser, and then you can just dock it as I just did. If I wanted to gain access to other small apps, we've got a timer. We also have a calculator. I mean, nothing groundbreaking, and then a screen cap application. And you can also resize these, move them around, do whatever you want. It's Sony's way of giving you quick access to tools they think you want to use, as well as the ability to customize those tools as I just showed you, and then they also get docked, as you can see right there. But that's just another element of the software that is part of the skin that the Z3 Tablet Compact has to offer. Just keep in mind this tablet also has an IR blaster like does not have an IR blaster is what I meant to say, like every other Sony tablet pretty much before it, which is disappointing. That, along with the lack of wireless charging, are probably my two biggest critiques of this device, things I would have liked to have seen Sony put into such an expensive tablet. But when you look at the compromise they put together, once the price gets lower, this is going to be an absolute must-have for so many different users. I don't care what OS you prefer. It has that IP68 rating, which I didn't even mention through the entire course of the video, which means waterproof, dustproof, of course, with limitations, and I don't ever really suggest testing them, but it's great to have that sort of insurance on this device, especially if you have children, pets. Not that that is really going to help you with a pet. After all, if this thing gets chewed, forget about it. But the Gorilla Glass, as long as we're not dealing with sand, is also an impeccable addition that Sony has employed here. So really a top-notch device, magnetic charging if you decide to go with it, storage expansion, of course, because after all, this is not a Nexus device. You can see right there the micro SD card slot, and it is covered up. If this was an LTE version, that would also be where you'd pop in your SIM slot. And all of these doors are there like previous Sony tablets, because the idea is quite simple. We need to essentially have the ability to keep this device watertight, and that's where you get that IP68 rating. On the top, or in this case the top, but really the right side of the tablet, you can see we have the power and volume rocker right there, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and really minimalist design, incredibly thin, and I have to say that is in this tablet's favor in a big, big way, because if you're looking for an e-reader, that balance for media consumption, this is probably the best I've ever seen, because it's so lightweight and yet has an 8-inch display with all this power and capability, which means you can really use this for a long time handheld without the issues you would, I would say, basically routinely run into with just about any other tablet in its class, especially larger, even smaller, because this is lighter than a lot of the smaller 7 and 8 inch counterparts that exist. That rear 8 megapixel camera, I wish there was an LED flash, but again, part of the compromise that Sony put together. Very little branding. I don't know about that. We've got Xperia plus Sony, and then of course our NFC contact point. White or black are your options, and really, this tablet, I have to say, no complaints. Pretty much bug-free. It takes quite a while to charge, something I didn't mention in the update that I originally did. You're looking at somewhere around, it could be as much as 6 hours to charge this thing. The good part of that, though, is that the battery life is fantastic. So you do have that going for it. Let me go ahead and do a little bit of quick web browsing for those of you that are curious to see what performance is like. Brightness, by the way, has been at 100% the entire time, and there isn't anything really that you're going to try to do here that you're going to not be able to do. There will be no failing element. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi performance, solid as a rock, and that's not something that can always be said, not only for Sony products, but for just about any tablet out of the box. It's always a questionable issue. Charles Barkley taking some heat today. But really, everything about this tablet flies. The 801 is a little bit long in the tooth. I don't like using that expression, but it's been out a really long time now, at least when it comes to mobile processors. That doesn't take anything away, though, from its performance capability, which means you're going to be able to do just about anything you want, as I just mentioned. The cameras are solid. Battery life is great. Again, I wish there was wireless charging. The waterproofing and dustproofing is a fantastic feature that really proves that even though this is one of the lightest and most powerful, I would say, ounce for ounce tablets on the market ever made, mobile devices, mobile computing offerings, it still has a level of ruggedness that basically no one else has. It's not a Toughbook product, but maybe Panasonic should think about that, considering Sony somehow is making the item closest to that, at least in my mind. But everything about this product, from design to performance, really is top notch. So again, I find myself struggling to find complaints with this. I've mentioned what really I think are core issues for me personally, but those are just things I would have liked to have seen because the price is so steep, and we all know that. But I think it's also Sony just building in the fact that they know it's going to be going on sale, and they may as well start higher, which maybe isn't the best strategy, but they are trying to recover. And I'm not here to judge that in any way. Those of you who follow my channel know that I traditionally try to give input background on where manufacturers are coming from, the psychology associated with their launches. And it seems to me that they had a winner with the Z3, and so they figured why not make a tablet to match. Now I just hope they make a larger one, because the PS4 gaming that I was just demoing, an amazing feature to have on a bigger screen. It would be an even easier sell to the majority of gamers out there. Even though this tablet is really marketed to be a mainstream consumer product, I think that is a sleeper capability that many don't even realize exists, and this is not something you can do with, remote streaming software to try to emulate. It's not a possibility. The Google software suite is what is expected. The album and movies, they're fine. To me personally, it's not something that I'm a big fan of, but this is what every manufacturer does in terms of giving you an interface, and Sony, like every other element of the software, the skin does a good job. And that's what I've been mentioning over and over again, not to be repetitive, but really to reemphasize the fact that the polish is there that maybe wasn't there in the past. And that's where, for the first time, Sony's mobile devices, specifically the Z3 line, is just some of the best that you're going to see in the entire market. For those of you that haven't seen this video demo, you're seeing it again. Or seeing it for the first time, I meant. For those of you who have, for my update, you're seeing it again. And it still just amazes me how they were able to pull this all off in the form factor that they did. Now let's just see a revision with an AMOLED, wireless charging, better cameras, why not, since it's Sony, better battery life, and we've got a great Z4 in the works. And of course, the obligatory processor and GPU upgrades. The critical thing here is that the GPU is still competent. It needed to be. It had to be in order for this to be a gaming tablet on the side. And it is. And that's another thing. I mean, had it not been, there would have been issues. This type of stuff I'm not getting into. This is, to me, the sideshow, the Mickey Mouse crap. Not to be rude or anything to Sony, but they're trying to, again, make a tablet that's going to appeal to everybody, and they really have pulled that off. The problem is the price will make it appeal to almost no one, and that is, unfortunately, one of those situations where the Z3 is its own worst enemy with regard to pricing. So you're looking at, really, in my opinion, despite the fact that it doesn't have the latest and greatest processor, it has enough RAM to complement that quad-core Snapdragon 801. It has a great GPU, a great display, great speakers, as I mentioned, very good battery life, even if it does take a long time to charge. That dust-proof, waterproofing, a tremendous bonus, even if you don't care about it. Why not have it if you can, at a lower price, hopefully, eventually. And the micro SD card slot for storage expansion pretty much solves any storage issues, complaints with the 16 or 32 gig variants, despite the advantages inherently we all know with onboard storage as opposed to expandable. And now software is really open for this device, something that Sony started doing last year, and they've gotten far more aggressive with, because they realize that responding to customers is the way to win repeat business, and by word of mouth through generally good customer feedback, gain even more business. Does a lot better than marketing. I can't say that enough, emphasize that enough. So you're looking at, in my opinion, one of the best tablets on the market. Unfortunately, also one of the most overpriced. But it does deliver on everything that you could possibly want, and does so in a package that makes everything else look big, bulky, antiquated. I mean, the iPad Mini 3, forget about it. Anyone who's comparing it, especially this white version, which should satisfy those of you that want that color, it kills it. I mean, the form factor, the capability, what it can do. I mean, unless, again, you are a complete loyalist to the OS, if we're talking about being realistic in this world and what mobile OSs are capable of doing, there are really no limitations anymore for Android that once upon a time an Apple user could point to. You may not prefer it as a platform, but from a hardware perspective, and again, from a functionality and capability perspective, the Z3 is hands down the best sub-10-inch tablet. Now, I love the Galaxy Tab S 8.4. I reviewed it in the past. A great device. That has the best display on the market. But when it comes to hardware and software pairings, it does not beat this tablet. It doesn't have the GPU, the CPU, and even though it has that AMOLED with a much higher res, not much, but a considerable higher pixel density, it still, in my opinion, is not as good a tablet as the Z3. But when it comes to pricing, the Tab S 8.4 will win every time. When we compare this to the Shield, as I did in the past, I think the Shield is a winner if budget is what you're primarily concerned with. On the other hand, if budget isn't a concern, then you probably don't care about the fact that you're not getting the Tegra K1, because who knows, you may just care more about the form factor and the looks of this tablet, because there's no question that when we compare the aesthetic of what this looks like next to the Shield tablet, this is a beaut. The Shield tablet is definitely literally and figuratively rough around the edges. And if you've held one, you know what I'm speaking about. When it comes to comparing this to Apple's product, I already did, and that really only leaves older generation tablets that I wouldn't even bother comparing it to. The Nexus 9, a bigger tablet that I've already compared it to, but it's not even a fair comparison because the Nexus 9 is 15 ounces. It's a giant beast compared to this thing, even though literally 0.9, not even a full inch of screen real estate separates them. But of course, a difference in aspect ratio. Here we have a 16:10, the Nexus 9 a 4:3. So a whole different approach to media consumption, content creation, enjoyment, and who Sony thinks is after this device. But build quality, really solid. For those of you that are worried because of how thin and lightweight it is, I can tell you there are absolutely no problems with construction, no flex, zero, no dead pixels, no backlight bleed. The triluminous display technology lives up to the brand's quality, and at least what I enjoy on my own Sony 4K display. And anyone who's seen their top of the line knows that Sony still has it when it comes to making phenomenal displays. They haven't lost it. It may not be making the money it once did, unfortunately, but it still is one of their best areas of expertise. And if it did have, if I did have a caveat about performance, it really would just be ultimately the quick charge. I wish that charge times were faster with this. I was anticipating a far better charge time, because that is something we're seeing now with just about every device. Even if everyone isn't on board with Qi certified wireless charging, they are at least adopting or adapting to the Micro 2.0 adaptive, faster charging methods, taking more advantage of how much power they can push through a Micro 2.0 cable. Unfortunately, here, I'm just not seeing that. And maybe that'll be addressed in firmware and charging. I think it can be. So I'm confident that that could change, but I'm not making you any promises. It's not like anyone from Sony has told me a thing. But at the end of the day, as I've said, pricing is its own worst enemy. Otherwise, this is an incredible tablet from, again, both the aesthetic to the functional, every functional element of it. And the software is really nice. You're not going to have any problems with it. I actually even prefer in many ways Sony's own custom UI here up at the top that you're looking at right now, the quick access to settings and notifications, than what you deal with in Lollipop, believe it or not. So hopefully, this skin is going to carry over into Lollipop. That's the way these skin updates work. But you can see Sony's integrated the stamina. Everything is here. And the settings menu, wow. So clean, and guess what? Lollipop looks a lot like this, and it's not coincidental. I think Google really did a great job at taking a look at every successful overlay and trying to pick every part of that. And I'm not saying they copied other manufacturers, but I think a collaboration, clearly, we'll call it that at the very least, came together, and Google found what they liked out there in the market, and they put together an OS that really resembles a lot of what we're seeing here. But you can see, whether we jump into Wi-Fi right now, take a look at what the performance looks like. Again, nowhere near the router at all. WRT 1900 AC, the Linksys, one of the top of the line routers out there. Of course, refresh probably isn't far away. But other things to know: Xperia connectivity I mentioned earlier with your phone, Bluetooth, no problems there. GPS, you've got a sound mixer on board, by the way. So that's another thing. Even though this is just general sound settings, you do have the ability to really take things on if you want to. You could just allow the clear audio to take it on, or you can go in with your equalizer. Really, Sony has geared this towards reminding people that this is part of their Walkman lineage, and that's a good thing, especially for anyone that remembers those days. So it's part of the brand. I'm not going to take you through all the menus, because really this review isn't about the menus. It's about whether or not the product is worth the money. And I've already said it's one of the best tablets I've ever seen, but I still can't tell you that it's worth its current asking price, unless, of course, you have the money literally to burn. I would leave it at that. In terms of everything else, multiple users, you've got just about everything you could want. Users right there, as you can see. Power management, your display options. As I mentioned, brightness has been cranked up through the entire course of this video. The image enhancements with the X-Reality engine, again, branding from Sony's TV lineup. So, just a total suite of software to make Sony's own identity really first and foremost present on this product, in the same way that every other manufacturer, I think, tries to do this. And they've done a really great job. I've complimented them over and over again, and that's because, unfortunately, as good a job as they've done, they thought people were willing to pay this sort of price, and I can't imagine that it's going very well. Again, this will be great when it's reduced down to about $300. I think even $400, it'll make it far more attractive, and we'll probably see $400 soon if I had to guess. So if you are in the market for it and can wait, I would. It has seen a slight discount, but really nothing more than the EDU type discount at this point, 10-15% at most from what I've seen online. But that pretty much rounds things out. I mean, when it comes to video playback, web browsing, obviously this thing's going to chew it up. You've seen it play PS4 games. Audio performance is great. Battery life is great. The cameras are fantastic. So you really have, at the end of the day, one of the most full-featured tablets ever made. And then it comes in this tiny wafer-thin package that resembles, of course, the Z3 phone. And then, wait, it's waterproof and dustproof. I know I've said this like 6 times, but that's because it is amazing. The problem is, so is the price, and I've said that 6 times too. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.